Okay, good morning. The flow of people through the door seems to have abated a little, so we should be starting. Good morning to you all. We have this session on mobility rights, needs, expectations, and costs. We have a distinguished panel here. Before I introduce the panel, I have to do something technical, which I was asked to do, which is the translation channels. You have them there, but I can read it from here. Number 8 is German, 8 für Deutsch. 9 is Russian. I cannot say it in Russian, I'm sorry. 10 is French, Français, 10. And 11 is English. In the panel, we have our guests sitting here in geographical order from your left to your right, as the same order as you have on the slide. My name is José Manuel Viegas. I'm the moderator of this session. So we have John Hanlon from the low-cost airlines, David Metz, visiting professor at University College London, Manfred Neun from the European Cyclists Fédération, Enrique Peñalosa, which you have seen earlier before. He's the director of the ITPD. Susan Pikrallidas, the Secretary General of the Fédération, International Federation of the Automobile, and Scherp of the European Commission. We will be conducting this session as follows. Each of them will have 5 minutes to speak on their issues under this topic of the mobility rights, needs, expectations, and costs. And I will give the word to each of them in sequence. Then I have prepared some questions which try to create discussion among the panel, because as you can see already, there are very different origins, institutional origins of these 6 people. So we have questions that we'll try to bind them together, and we will go with the panel for something like another half hour or 45 minutes. And then I've reserved something like 15 to 20 minutes for discussion with the room. So I would encourage you, as you listen to the original presentations or to the debate amongst the panel members, please take note of your questions, either for clarification or for confrontation, something that you don't agree on. Please don't make long statements of your standing on something. The idea here is not to have standings, is to have discussion. And without further ado, please, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does it need to be switched on? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you. I represent the Low Fares Airline Association, the European Low Fares Airline Association, and we're very much into mobility. Mobility is actually, I think the order of the question is actually perhaps capable of being improved. I think mobility exists as a need on behalf of people, always has, for trade, for social interaction. That's led to a raising of level of expectation of mobility, and that's been translated over time by some governments into rights of mobility, and the European Union has embodied that in the Lisbon Agenda, and is very careful in most of its legislative developments to make sure that they are not in conflict with the right of mobility, and we strongly applaud that. People's expectations of mobility have grown with the changes in technology that have made journeys further afield possible, the development of economies, and the rise in disposable income. The development of the jet engine transformed intercontinental travel, but it still remained for a long time the preserve of a wealthy elite because fare levels were extremely high. It also suffered from very, very high and close regulation by governments, which did nothing to encourage carriers to be more competitive and offer lower fares. More far-sighted governments wanted to bring that within the reach of the masses and actually opened it up in terms of market access, liberalized it. That happened in the United States, and it transformed the growth of aviation. It happened in Europe more recently, and that really gave birth to my segment of the industry, and we are now 1/3 of intra-European passengers and will be 2/3 by 2020 if the forecasts that we receive are correct. So that really has enabled millions of Europeans to travel by air, to seek work, seek employment. It's enabled business people to make investment, and the low fare segment actually, we think, has responded by coming in with different structures, lower costs, lower fares, and that has been a tremendous stimulus to growth. It's quite good value for money for states in that we tend to use, not exclusively, but we tend to use redundant infrastructure at secondary or regional airports that is eschewed by traditional airlines. So we're not necessarily requiring a massive investment by states. And by serving regions, we improve connectivity between regions tremendously, enabling more people to consider journeys that don't require transfer via an intermediate hub. We believe the way forward to bring travel within the reach of more people is actually to encourage more competition, and we actually advocate the primacy of competition over regulation. There will always in our industry be a need for regulation of critical areas, including safety. We also see a need for competition to step in, for regulation rather, to step in where there may be an abuse of a dominant position. But in the main, regulation should in the commercial area be reserved as a proxy for competition, and only competition really protects the interest of the consumer. We were asked also to consider the costs. I've mentioned that we use secondary airports, we use existing infrastructure. Our industry as a sector is unique in paying all the costs of its infrastructure. We pay for the airports we use, the air traffic control services we use. So there isn't really a great cost to states directly arising from our sector. But we acknowledge, and it may surprise you to hear it from an airline person, that we do have an impact on the environment. It may be small in global terms. It's estimated by the Stern Review at 3% of global emissions of CO2. But that's still material, and it needs to be addressed, and we're prepared to address it. Technological development will help us, but we're still probably 10 years away from a new aircraft that will significantly reduce our dependence on carbon fuels, and maybe longer than that. So we need enlightened approaches to that will enable us to continue to grow sustainably, but not imposing measures that actually will curb growth, such as taxation, which doesn't do anything for the environment, but actually does suppress demand. We actually support the inclusion of aviation in EU ETS, and we believe that's the right market mechanism to the benefit of consumer at the lowest cost to society.
Thank you, John. David? Very punctual, like airlines always are.
My interest, so is this working? Yes, okay. My interest is in the role of human mobility in society, and I need to understand it better in order to have better policies. So let me show you just one slide with data from the United Kingdom. This is our National Travel Survey, which has been going for nearly 40 years. It's a large survey involving currently 20,000 people a year who complete 7-day travel diaries. It covers all modes of travel except international travel by air. It's personal, so the data is per capita, and it's what I call daily travel, the bulk of the travel we do, and it's domestic in the United Kingdom. The bottom line shows the average number of journeys made a year. About 1,000 a year, hasn't changed over the period, very stable. The middle line shows the average time people travel, about 375 hours per person per year, or close to an hour a day. Again, pretty stable over the period, and this is found at population level wherever you look. The upper line shows the growing mobility of society, rising from 4,500 miles per person per year in the early 1970s to a plateau of about 7,000 miles per person per year, starting in the mid-1990s. You can see a downturn in the last couple of years, probably the effect of recession. Don't expect that's a long-term trend.